Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the sources you send us, dive deep, and pull out the really interesting stuff. No need to scroll endlessly. We bring the insights directly to you.
Exactly.
Today, we're heading way, way back. Early dinosaurs. We're focusing on a pretty recent discovery called Archaeocursor.
Yes, a fascinating one.
We've got some info from the scientific paper, related details, and, well, our mission really is to figure out what this creature tells us about early dinosaur evolution, specifically in Asia.
Absolutely. It's a small piece of the puzzle, just one bone, but it opens up a really intriguing window into that time period. And yeah, the Asian context is key here.
Okay, let's start with the name, Archaeocursor. It sounds dramatic. What's the story there?
It does have a good ring to it, doesn't it?
Hmm.
The paper breaks it down. It's Latin. Archaeocursor literally means old runner.
Old runner, okay.
Yeah, archaeo for old or ancient, think archaeology, and cursor. Well, that means runner, someone who runs.
Makes
Mhm.
sense. And the second part, Asiaticus.
That one's more straightforward. Just means from Asia. Pretty clear where it was found.
Right.
And Yao and their team, they're the ones who officially named it back in 2025.
Old runner from Asia.
Got it.
So where did they find this old runner? In China, you said.
Yeah, exactly. The fossil turned up in 2022 near Chongqing Central Park.
Central Park, like in the city.
Pretty close, yeah. Geologically speaking, it's from the Zilijiang Formation, specifically a part called the Dongjimiao member.
So this wasn't some expedition out in the Gobi Desert then?
No, not quite. It was actually what paleontologists call a salvage operation.
Salvage.
Yeah, basically there was construction happening, I think, in a residential area, and geologists were on site specifically looking out for fossils that might get unearthed by the digging.
Wow. So it was kind of a lucky break during construction.
Pretty much. It happens more often than you might think, actually.
Yeah.
It's how some really important finds are made. And this particular bone, it's now safe and sound in the collection of the Chongqing Municipal Bureau of Planning and Natural Resources.
Okay, you mentioned this bone. I was picturing, I don't know, a huge skeleton. How much do they actually find?
It's actually just a single bone.
One bone. That's it.
Yep, but it's a good one. It's a left femur, the thigh bone, almost complete. Its official designation is L01HY999.
A single femur. Huh. Okay, I guess you can tell a lot from that.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it's well preserved, like this one seems to be, you'd be surprised.
So this thigh bone found in this specific rock layer near Chongqing. What was the environment like back then? What kind of world did this old runner live in?
Right, so that takes us to what's called the Yuzu biota. That's the fossil assemblage, the sort of collection of fossils found in that formation.
Okay.
An Archaeocursor is part of it. It represents a lacustrine environment, basically a big lake ecosystem.
A lake. Interesting.
Yeah, and what's really cool is the diversity they're finding there. You've got amazing plant fossils, invertebrates, different kinds of fish, and even, get this, pliosaurids.
Whoa, hang on. Pliosaurids, those huge marine reptiles in a lake.
I know, right? It's intriguing. It suggests maybe connections to the sea or perhaps just a very, very large lake system. It paints a picture of a really rich ecosystem.
Definitely sounds like it.
And the Yuzu biota itself is really significant because it seems to capture life just after the big end-Triassic extinction event. So you're seeing the beginnings of recovery, new groups starting to diversify.
And our Archaeocursor. How did a land dinosaur end up in a lake?
Well, the most likely scenario is that the animal died near the lake or maybe near a river feeding into it, and its body, or parts of it like the femur, got washed in after death.
Okay, so it wasn't going for a swim.
Probably not intentionally, no.
So what's the big deal about this particular dinosaur? Why Archaeocursor for this deep dive? What makes it stand out?
Well, the main thing, the headline really, is that Archaeocursor is currently the oldest and most basal Ornithischian dinosaur described from Asia.
Oldest and most basal. Okay, basal, what does that mean in evolutionary terms? Like basic?
Not quite basic. Think of it like the base of a family tree. It means it's one of the earliest branches to split off within that group, the Ornithischia.
Ornithischia, those are the bird-hipped ones, right? Plant eaters.
Exactly. That's the huge group that eventually includes things like Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Iguanodon, all those familiar plant eaters. So Archaeocursor is right near the beginning of that whole major lineage.
And finding the oldest one from Asia, that's a big claim. Were there others around that time in Asia?
They're really rare from the early Jurassic in Asia. That's part of why this find is so important. The paper does mention Euxiosaurus.
Euxiosaurus.
Yeah, another early Ornithischian from Asia. But it's a thyreophoran, one of the early armored dinosaurs, like a primitive ancestor of Stegosaurus.
Hmm.
So Archaeocursor represents a different, even earlier branch.
So finding Archaeocursor really shakes things up for early dinosaur evolution in Asia.
It really does. It fills a big gap. It suggests maybe that this major group of dinosaurs, the Ornithischians, might have started diversifying in Asia earlier than we previously thought. It potentially, pushes back their origins in this part of the world.
Makes you rethink the whole picture.
Definitely. It raises questions about whether Asia played a more central role in their early history than we realized.
Okay, so it's old, it's important for the family tree. What about the actual animal? You said just the femur was found. How big was it? What did it look like?
Right. Based on that one femur, which is about 93 millimeters long, so roughly 3.7 inches.
Wow, that's pretty small for a femur.
It is. So working from that, Yao and the team estimate the total body length of the Archaeocursor individual was probably around 1 meter.
1 meter.
Yeah.
About 3.3 feet. That's tiny.
Yeah, a pretty small dinosaur, especially compared to later giants. And there's more. They did histological analysis.
Cutting into the bone.
Essentially, yeah, making very thin slices and looking at the microstructure under a microscope. And from that, they can tell this specific animal was likely an early adult. So it was probably close to fully grown, but maybe not quite there yet.
Like a teenager almost.
Sort of, yeah. Still had a little bit of growing potentially left to do. You can see growth lines, kind of like tree rings that tell you about its age and growth rate.
A small, nearly adult, old runner. Okay, the picture's getting clear. Now, fitting it into the bigger dinosaur family tree, where exactly does it sit? Who are its closest relatives?
Okay, so this involves phylogenetic analysis, comparing features across different fossils to build that tree. The analysis puts Archaeocursor firmly within Ornithischia, as we said.
You're right.
More specifically, it seems to branch off after a group called the Heterodontosaurids.
Heterodontosaurids, I've heard of them. Early ones, right, with weird teeth.
That's them. Also, early Ornithischians, known for having different kinds of teeth incisors, canines, molars, almost mammal-like in that way. So Archaeocursor comes after them on the tree.
Okay. And its closest relative, its sister.
Yeah, the analysis points to it being the sister taxon, its closest evolutionary cousin, to another dinosaur called Eocursor.
Eocursor, where was that one found?
Get this, South Africa.
South Africa. And Archaeocursor is from China. That's a long way apart for close cousins in the early Jurassic.
It is a huge distance, yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to a really interesting, though tentative, hypothesis put forward by Yao and the team.
One.
They suggest that maybe the common ancestor of both Archaeocursor and Eocursor originally lived in Gondwana.
Gondwana, the big southern supercontinent, Africa, South America.
Exactly. So the idea is this ancestral population was in Gondwana, and then somehow some of them dispersed northward, eventually reaching Laurasia, the northern supercontinent, and then spreading into East Asia, where Archaeocursor evolved.
Wow, that's quite a trek for these little plant eaters, the northward migration.
It's a big journey to imagine, yeah. But the fossil record for early Ornithischians is still pretty patchy globally.
And the paper stresses this is just a hypothesis for now, right? Because it's based on just the one bone.
Absolutely. They're very clear about that. It's a plausible scenario based on the current evidence. But, finding more fossils, especially more complete ones, or finds in intermediate locations would be absolutely crucial to test that idea properly.
Right. How confident can you even be with just one bone for that kind of theory?
It's definitely pushing the boundaries of interpretation. You rely heavily on the specific features present on that one bone and how they compare. More evidence is definitely needed to strengthen that Gondwanan origin and dispersal idea.
Makes sense. Okay, the paper also had one of those branching diagrams, a cladogram. For people like me who get lost in those, what's the main takeaway visually?
Yeah, cladograms can look a bit complex. Think of it as that family tree visual. So at the bottom, the root is Ornithischia.
The whole group.
Right. Then typically the first branch off might be something like Pisanosaurus, a very early, possibly controversial member. Then you see the Heterodontosauridae branching off. And then the cladogram shows Archaeocursor and Eocursor branching off together as sister taxa, like we discussed.
So they're paired up on their own little branch.
Exactly. And then further up the tree, you get the big group called Genosauria. That contains pretty much all the other Ornithischians we know, like the armored Thyreophora and the Neornithischia group.
So the diagram just visually confirms that relationship. Archaeocursor and Eocursor splitting off early, before the main diversification.
Precisely. It shows its position. an early offshoot, closely linked to this South African contemporary, but distinct from the later, more familiar groups. It helps visualize its evolutionary significance.
Got it. That makes it much clearer where our little old runner fits in the grand scheme of dinosaur evolution.
Yeah, it's a really key piece, helping us understand how these plant eaters started to spread and diversify across the world, especially after that big end-Triassic shakeup.
Okay, so let's quickly sum up this deep dive on Archaeocursor. We're talking about an early, pretty small dinosaur, the old runner, living in the early Jurassic in what's now China.
Found near Chongqing, yeah.
And this single thigh bone, discovered by chance during construction, is actually super important. It's the oldest known ornithischian